Now available, paperback and Kindle Unlimited. ISIS, the main event. It's carnage inside of a steel cage when the goddess next door steps in the squared circle with the beast from the boss in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, the main event, paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Tony Kahn needs to hire a booker for AEW. And your Tony Kahn needs to hire a booker for AEW because your AEW over the last couple of months has been suffering in two core elements as related to pro wrestling, and that is character and story. Now, AEW has some really fantastic wrestling matches. Unfortunately, they have not had the storylines that have been compelling to make viewers care about the characters or make them care about the storylines. The biggest problem I see with AEW is that while they have many good wrestlers on their roster, many of their wrestlers really lack as related to developing a compelling character, and because they lack as related to creating a compelling character, they just can't get over. Many of the wrestlers who are very good in the ring really don't have good mic skills, and they don't know how to connect with the audience in a way that lets them get to know them, and that is partially due to the booking, where they really don't focus on developing stories that make us care about these wrestlers as people. That is a major problem over at AEW. Yes, again, they have very good wrestlers who are fantastic in the ring. Unfortunately, they don't focus on a key element that turns a wrestler into a superstar, and that is the ability to entertain by knowing how to work the mic and work the crowd. This was one of the problems I saw early on with some of their talent, like Big Swole, who Tony Khan would go out here and give a push. The problem was, yes, Big Swole was not really that great in the ring, but she was even worse on the mic. And if you can't really work the mic, you're not going to be able to work the crowd. And that was a problem they had with Thunder Rosa. Again, another fantastic female wrestler, and was excellent in the ring. But the problem was Tony Khan did not take time to develop Rosa's character, and he didn't take time to go out here and let her get on the mic. Same thing with Hikaru Shida. Same thing with many other wrestlers that are on AEW's roster. A lot of these wrestlers, like Dante Martin, many of them, they are great in the ring, but they don't have that character that really gets our attention and really makes the show must-see TV. I mean, when you think of guys like The Rock, what made The Rock very compelling wasn't just his ring work, it was his character. And the same thing with Undertaker, Stone Cold, and many of the other WWE wrestlers. What made them compelling was their characters, and what also made them compelling was you had a booker who took these characters and put them into stories, and when he put them into those stories, it answered the critical question, and that was, why should we care? Why should I care about this wrestler? I mean, this is the question Tony Khan does not really answer in a lot of his shows. He doesn't answer the question, okay, this guy, yes, he's a great wrestler, he's got a great look, but I need a voice, I need a personality, and he needs to create segments with these wrestlers that really connect us to them, because you've got guys like Absolute Ricky Starks and Hobbs who are, again, dying on the vine because they don't get a chance to develop their characters and they don't get a chance to talk to the audience. I mean, you really do need segments where these wrestlers can start talking to the audience, start connecting with the audience, and start working the crowd. Because what I saw on the September 14th Dynamite was an absolute disaster of a show. And it was a disaster of a show due to the booking, and the booking is the problem with AEW, because yes, your Tony Khan can go out here and coordinate good matches, but he's not really focusing on the most important part of the show, which is the story and the storylines. And that was a major disaster with that September 14th show. I'm sitting here watching him go out here and try to book a match on the at the Arthur Ashe Stadium at the expense of long-term storytelling. Now, there was this match between your Swerve and Our Glory, the tag team champs, and Death Triangle, the newly minted trios champs, and this whole match was poorly put together because it tarnished the newly minted trios champions and had them taking a loss against the tag team champions. You could have easily split both of those matches into two different matches, and you could have had the effect of building up the storyline. Now, as I see it, the whole Death Triangle and versus Swerve and Our Glory really, it made the trios champions look weak, because here you have three guys who cannot beat a tag team of your Swerve and Our Glory, and that just really made the Lucha Brothers really not look strong. And then you had the Acclaimed coming in to just do a spot, and again, you could have done that spot easily with a match between your Swerve and Our Glory and maybe the Butcher and the Blade, or you could have put two jobbers in there and had them have that match, and then after the match, you could have had your Swerve and Our Glory win the match and then have that confrontation with the Acclaim. Then you could have taken the Death Triangle and gone out here and had them have a match against some jobbers, and then have them beat the jobbers, and then have the Orange Cassidy run in, and then you would have had the setup for your match with your Pac for that Mid-Atlantic Championship, which basically has not really been seen very well. And we can't see the Prestige because the title is not really pushed enough by Tony Khan. While we could have had a nice little Tupac jab where he's got two belts and he says he's Tupac, that would have been fun if they had it as a separate segment and he worked the crowd for a minute in the trios match against the jobbers, and then Orange Cassidy and Best Friends would have come out, and that would have led to a better build-up to that match at Arthur Ashe Stadium. But the way they did it, the Lucha Brothers have to take a pin, which destroys some of the credibility for that newly minted trios belt. And what that does is, as you're trying to set up for the whole thing with Pac, you're making him look weak because he gets this ambush from Orange Cassidy, who is a babyface, and this whole ambush that he has really starts to make it look like he's a heel. And again, that's just bad booking all around as related to that match. Now, another segment that I found to be head-scratching was a segment where MJF came out, then introduced Stokely Carmichael, and then your Stokely comes out and talks about these four guys who are a part of his so-called faction. That whole segment with the faction after MJF left and worked the crowd and got them nice and riled up basically fell apart because your Stokely had all of these different wrestlers standing there, and all of them really didn't have their characters really well put together. I mean, Ethan Page was the best as related to getting his character together, but guys like your Lee Moriarty and the others, and the Gun Club, they really came across as awkward, and they really showed how they still need to remain on Dark until they can get more character development. Because the problem at AEW is that they really do not take the time to develop characters and let those characters grow and have a voice that can really grab the audience and get their attention. And these four guys, they came across as really awkward when you compare them to seasoned guys like your MJF, Wardlow, and FTR. When they were the pinnacle, you could feel the synergy of that group. You could feel the dynamics of that group coming together. But Stokely's group, your MJF, he's just saying, oh, they're friends of his, but that's not enough to make me care about these wrestlers as characters and really make them stand out as characters. Now, another bad segment at your on the 14th Dynamite was the women's tag team match, and this was a complete disaster from minute one as related to booking, because the original match was supposed to be Hikaru Shida and Toni Storm versus Britt Baker and I believe somebody, Jamie Hayter, but the whole match just fell apart. And your Tony Khan really didn't do a good job of booking this match, because originally it's supposed to be something as related to Hikaru Shida. She couldn't make it because she was going to Japan, and he tried to do this segment on AEW Dark where Hikaru Shida gets beat up by Britt Baker and Rebel. But the whole problem with that is not that many people watch Dark in comparison to Dynamite. So he put a segment on Dark to try to explain things away, but that whole segment should have been on television, and that segment should have been on television so that people could get a better understanding of why Athena and Serena Deeb were replacing these wrestlers. We needed to see this on television so that we could care, and we also needed to see this whole storyline being set up properly so that the viewer could come in and understand what's going on. Again, when you have a good booker is going to sit down with somebody like Hikaru Shida months in advance, and they're going to talk about her work in Japan. And as they're going to talk to her about her work in Japan, what they're going to do is set up the storyline where Shida is not put on the spot, and Shida can go out here, do her work in Japan, come back to AEW, and be able to flow in a feud organically and not have it feeling so just disorganized and not really coordinated. When you have a booker, they can go out here and say, okay, I know that Shida is not going to be here for the week of the 14th, so I'm not going to book her in any matches for possibly 2 or 3 weeks, so that we can go out here and flow organically. And what I'm going to do is put somebody else in that spot and build them up, because the way your Athena was put into the match made it really clumsy, and the whole finish of that whole women's match was a complete disaster. Now, that whole finish of the women's match just again really destroyed the credibility of your interim women's champion, Toni Storm, because your Toni Storm is supposed to be the interim women's champion, and she's taking a pin on television. That really, again, makes your champion look bad, because it makes it look like they cannot go out here and win matches. And while they did this with Bianca Belair with your Bayley last week on, I think, Raw, they did that and as a way to say, okay, we want to just try to put some psychological mind games as related to your Bianca Belair, who had been champion for a couple of months, so she had some build-up, she had some credibility, but your newly minted interim women's champion should not be taking a pin on television, because that makes your newly minted champion look weak, and it makes it where this champion doesn't look strong on television. Now, that was the first part of a horrible finish for a match. The other horrible part was your Jamie Hayter coming in and taking a chair from Britt Baker to hit Toni Storm. Again, your Jamie Hayter at this point is a tweener, and what you want to do with a tweener is try to build them up slowly by having them do little run-ins or things where they're just standing at the front in the beginning of a match to make it look like things are she's going to go face or she's going to go heel. But they had her helping the heels, which really didn't really flow organically into the story that was being presented in the ring, as related to your Britt Baker denying Jamie Hayter the chance to win the interim AEW Women's Championship. This feud, which they're trying to build, is really starting to lose its momentum early on, and it's losing its momentum because the bookers are not really focusing on the story or seeing where they're going wrong with the story. Because, one, if your champ is out here, your champ needs to be booked strong when they first get the belt. Because when your champ gets the belt, it's supposed to say that they are capable of handling situations where they're in a match. And again, having your champ pinned in a tag team match, that's not really a smart thing. Now, this is where you go out here, and if you're going to have Athena in the match, what you want to do is have her take the pin, and then when you have the beatdown, then you could have the beatdown being done by the heels. And the heels, this is what's going to make them credible, because your champ is not made to look weak. So that's where the booking went wrong in that match, and that's where the booking fell completely apart. And as I was watching that September 14th Dynamite, it became more clear to me that AEW needs a booker, and it needs a booker now. Because a booker is somebody who can go out here and assess the characters of the wrestlers, and a booker can go out here and assess the reactions of the crowd. And when you have a booker and they're assessing the characters, they're assessing the reactions of the crowd, they can then go out here and talk to the talent and work with them on developing storylines that can get the viewers interested and make the audience care about their characters, and help them work on developing their characters so that they can become more compelling and get more people interested in them. That's the important part of having a booker. A booker can go out here and work on the storylines, they can work on the characters, and they can work on making sure that the finishes flow organically from one segment to the next. And as they're flowing from one segment to the next, this makes sure you have a more cohesive show. And once you have a cohesive show, that means all the audience at the venue are satisfied, and the audience at the show watching on television are satisfied as well. And that's a big problem at AEW. Yes, they have the great wrestling, but they don't have that synergy as related to characters and story. And because they don't have that synergy as related to characters and story, they really cannot put together a show that really flows organically, and have shows where you have good finishes that flow organically. You really need a booker to set up all of the different story points in the show, and you need a booker to set up the matches so that they can go out here and flow organically. Because when I see your newly minted trios champions fighting tag team champions for more belts, again, that makes no logical sense, because I would rather have it where you take one of your dark groups like Dark Order, or one of these other groups that are part of trios, and have them go out here and fight for the trios belts, and then have them have the best friends pop out, and then have Orange Cassidy talk about the Tupac, or Pac say he's the Tupac with the two belts, and then Orange Cassidy saying he wants some of that gold for himself. That's something that would be compelling, and that's just me coming off the top of my head. And then you would have the tag team champions taking on somebody like the Dark Order number 10 and number 1, or Reynolds and Silver, and they could go out here, and that would help build up Keith Lee and Swerve as a heel group, having them take on those faces. And then after that, you have Acclaimed coming out after the match, and then having Caster go out here and check your Swerve Strickland. And then we have a little bit of Swerve showing that he might be a bit more of a heel than Keith Lee. That would have been a better segment than what they presented. And then after that, instead of having that really awkward segment after MJF with that new group Stokely was doing, I would have done that as a backstage segment. I would have had a segment with Wardlow going out here and defending the TNT belt against one of these guys like Josh Woods, or one of the Iron Savages, or one of these other wrestlers. I would have had your Wardlow come out, because again, your TNT belt really needs to be on the air, and we need to see Wardlow more often, because again, he's really over, and having him in a segment would actually help the show's flow, and it would actually help build up your Wardlow and help us see the Powerbomb City, which would have gotten the crowd really up, and that would have been another segment they could have put in. And I would have, after with that women's match, I would have again not just had I would have had Toni Storm and Athena, but I would have had your Athena take the pin, and then you could have done your tweener segment with Jamie Hayter, and you could have made it into a stronger match. Or you could have gone out here and had Toni get the pin from Jamie Hayter's outside interference, and that would have been a stronger build to your story, which really shows, again, the women's division doesn't have the good booking and doesn't really have the good writing, because to have another four-way match set for that one at the Arthur Ashe Stadium really shows that they're really focused on putting good booking on their women's division. But overall, when I look at AEW, they really need a booker. AEW needs a writer that can go out here and create stories for the talent, and they need somebody there to sit down with the talent and help them develop their characters and develop the segments that will allow people to get to know the characters. Because when I looked at that show, it really was one of the worst I've seen. And again, you've got all of this talent sitting there. I mean, I would have, after the Powerbomb City, I would have started a little feud with Wardlow and Hobbs, because I believe Hobbs should be going out here looking for some gold, and that's something that should have been on the show as related to the TNT Championship. I mean, you've got Hobbs and Starks; they're just sitting there, and they should be feuding with Wardlow. And with the TBS Championship, which is in much better shape, your Jade Cargill is got the title, and she really needs somebody to feud with. And again, this is where the booker comes in. The booker assesses the talent. The booker sees who's over. The booker sees what talent is available for different matches, and the booker sets up all of the matches in a sequence that allow you to have a show that flows from beginning to end. That's what happens when you have a good booker. A good booker can go out here and create compelling characters, compelling stories, make us care, and make the belts feel like they are valuable. Because that, when I look at a show that was as sloppily booked as that 14th show, it's really not making the belts look strong. And the whole point of being in a wrestling organization is to win titles. And when your champions are getting pinned and looking bad, it makes the overall show not a very good show. So I really do believe Tony Khan needs to step aside and let a booker come in. Yes, like Vince, he can have the final say on matches, but the whole thing is he needs to let the bookers start telling the story and creating compelling characters that make us care. We really do need that focus on character and story, because yes, AEW has fantastic talent, but the fantastic talent is a form that needs to be wrapped around the structure of solid storytelling. That's what AEW needs for its organization. It needs a booker to create the structure of storytelling so that viewers have a reason to care about what goes on in AEW. Now, if you want to pick up my book paying tribute to pro wrestling, ISIS the Main Event, you can find it in paperback and on Kindle. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. And if you want to see me make more wrestling videos, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today.